And let's look at lines 5 and 6. What do you see there?
Lines 5 and 6 show a phone call that was received June 7th, 2021 at 8.
Anything before the jury comes in?
Nothing from the state, Your Honor. Nothing from Mr. Murdaugh.
Bring them on.
Jury is present, sir.
Sir, thank you. You may call your next witness. Yes, sir.
State of South Carolina, we're now called Dathan Murdaugh.
I do.
State your name again for the record. Spell your last name.
My name is Dathan Brian Murdaugh. Last name is Varnadoe.
Good afternoon.
Afternoon.
Dathan Murdaugh.
Yes, I go by Brian.
Okay. And your rank, sir?
I'm a sergeant.
Sergeant Murdaugh, would you tell the ladies and gentlemen of this jury, please, about Brian Murdaugh, where you're from, your background, a little bit of your family, and how you got in law enforcement?
I'm from right here in Walterboro, South Carolina. I started in the Department of Corrections in 1996. I worked in the Department of Corrections state prison system for 18 years, and now I've been here with the Colleton County Sheriff's Office almost 10.
Okay, and I know you kind of soft. You just pull up and maybe speak in there a little bit, if you don't mind, sorry. So you worked in the prison system for how long?
18 years.
Okay. And then after that, you came to Colleton?
Yes, I came to Colleton in 2013.
Okay, tell the folks, what different areas have you worked in Colleton?
In the Sheriff's Office for about a year. I worked the road. Then in 2014, I went to investigations, primarily gang investigations, and I worked in that area until now present.
You know, tell them about your training in law enforcement. Y'all go through Criminal Justice Academy?
Criminal Justice Academy.
Periodic. Talk about it a little bit, please.
South Carolina Criminal Justice Academy. I believe at that time it was 11 weeks. It changes. I was there 11 weeks, and we go through the basic training for law enforcement, through the legals, traffic stops, so forth. But and also have training there in gang investigations. Also, they provide.
And are you married?
Yes,
How many children do you have?
I have two.
Does your wife work?
Yes.
Where does she work?
Works for the city of Walterboro.
City of Walterboro. Now, if I could please take you back, Sergeant, to June, specifically June 7th of 2021. What was your role with the Colleton County Sheriff's Department that day, please?
I worked investigations during that time also. Of course, the night of this incident, I was off at that time. I was called in later.
And were you on call?
We
Did
somewhat,
pretty much everybody get called in?
yes, sir. All investigators got called in.
And where were you told to respond to? Where did you respond to, Sergeant?
The location on Moselle Road.
4147 Moselle Road
That's right.
in Colleton County.
In Colleton County.
Please tell the ladies and gentlemen, when you were coming up to Moselle, well, first of all, do you remember what entrance, how you went in?
Yes, I went in by the dog kennels, that entrance. Not all the way down, I parked near the roadway and walked in.
Had you been to that residence prior to June 7th when you got there in 2021?
It had been some years when I was on the road. I responded to an alarm call out there one time.
Years prior to this?
Yes.
Did you know where to go when you got there? I mean, what were you instructed to do? Do you know where to go on the property?
I was told that driveway where the dog kennels are, don't come in where the brick columns are.
I'm going to show you what's marked as stage 303. Sergeant, I've never shown you this before, have I?
No.
Do you recognize this is an aerial view of Moselle? And where you responded?
Yes.
Okay, Your Honor, without objection, 303.
It's admitted.
And you said you came in the second entrance?
Yes, you want to point to it?
Can you do that?
Right here. I parked somewhere in this area. And I walked the rest of the way.
And Sergeant, you get out of your car and then tell them what you did next.
When I got on scene, there was other emergency vehicles there. Other investigators had beat me there. Pretty much I made contact with my supervisor and asked him what it needed me, what area he needed me in, what he needed me doing.
And who is your supervisor?
Captain Jason Chapman.
And what did he tell you or ask you to do or instruct you to do?
He instructed me to find Mr. Alex Murdaugh and take GSR of his hands, gunshot residue.
Prior to that, did you have an occasion, did you see the bodies of who we all know now are Paul and Maggie? Did you see their bodies?
Yes.
Did you get close to them or inspect them?
I didn't inspect them, maybe 10 feet maybe.
Okay. So you were able to see them from a distance, is
Yes.
that fair? So your captain had instructed that you find Alex Murdaugh and attempt to get a GSR kit, or to take GSR money?
Minister a kit to, yes, sir.
All right, and I don't think there'll be any objection to this. Tell the folks what is the GSR?
Well, it stands for gunshot residue. The kit itself tests for gunshot residue on the hands is where it's administered to the hands of an individual.
And at the Colleton County Sheriff's Department and maybe other places, are you trained in how to collect that from an individual?
Yes, we train in-house.
And,
It's pretty self-explanatory.
okay, pretty simple procedure.
That's right.
Had you taken GSR from a person prior to this?
Yes.
Okay. How many times? You have any idea?
20.
Now, when you got there, how far was the defendant, Alex Murdaugh, from where you were? Where was he? When you were told to go check his hands,
He was, at this time when I saw him, he was behind the yellow tape they had up the backside. It's actually, it was an area between the sheds or the dog kennels and his home.
okay. And after the captain had asked you to do that, what'd you do?
I went and got a kit and approached Mr. Murdaugh.
Had you ever seen Alex Murdaugh before that night?
Yes,
Okay. Did you know him before that night?
yes.
Okay. Well, can you tell us how you knew him?
I testified as an expert witness in one of his cases.
An expert witness?
Yes.
Is that the gang which you said earlier you're back?
Yes, it had to do with a gang case.
And do you mind what you testified to?
It was some terminology that was used in a phone call, and he wanted, in my area of expertise with gang lingo and gang slang, he wanted me to testify to a statement that was said on a phone call.
So you weren't involved in the actual case?
No,
Okay, so Mr. Defendant Alex Murdaugh asked you to come testify as an expert?
yes,
Okay. And was he sitting over here at the time at this table?
yes,
I mean, the prosecution table?
prosecution table, yes.
In this courtroom?
He was here at Hampton, I'm 100% sure.
In a courtroom?
Right.
Well, I'm curious, what were you called to testify about?
Like I said, it was some terminology used in a phone call. He was prosecuting in this case.
What were you asked to testify the terminology? I'm just curious.
An individual was on the phone telling someone to go and get the whistle, and he wanted me to clarify what that term
Get the
meant.
whistle?
Yes.
What
He was
does the-
referring to a firearm.
Okay, the whistle. So you were interpreting that a whistle meant a firearm?
Right.
Okay, and the inmate wanted somebody to do something with the whistle?
That's what I was told that the phone call was about, yes.
Okay. Did you testify?
I did.
And when was that?
It's probably been 5, 6 years.
Okay. So on June 7th of 2021, when you saw the defendant, did he recognize you as far as you can tell?
Yes,
Okay. Did he recognize you as far as you could tell?
yes,
Did he say your name?
yes,
Okay. Did you say his name?
yes, sir.
Okay. And can you tell the jury how you went about to do your job?
I'm sorry, say again?
How'd you go about doing your job? What'd you do? What'd you say to him?
I approached him, I had the kit, and I went to Mr. Murdaugh and told him I had to administer this kit to his hands. He stated he understood the procedure, and just a few minutes, and I was out of his way.
And I do think not to do it. Your Honor, can you come down here?
Yes.
Please. I'm going to show you what's been marked States 301. Do you recognize this kit in general? Not-
Yes.
And did you look inside?
No, this one, no.
Okay, would you look inside? Do you recognize this?
Yes.
Type of kit? Is this the type of kit you used on the defendant Alex Murdaugh on June 7th of 2021?
Actually, the type of kit had, I believe, had 4 vials, but it's the same idea.
Well, they used to have 4, but now they have 2, correct?
Yes.
Okay. You're on 301 without objection.
That's correct.
Submit it.
If you stay here, let's pull out 301 and just show the jury what you did, and I've got some questions, Sarge. You okay?
I'm good?
Okay. What's the first thing you do when you get ready to take a gunshot residue from somebody?
Well, I have my own gloves. I put on gloves before I administer this kit
Okay.
to the individual.
All right.
I explain to him what I'm doing and what it's for.
Can you voice up, please?
Yes, sir. I explain to him what it's for and why I'm doing it.
Okay. And you looking at them?
Yes,
How far are you from them?
about you and I.
Okay. And this night, let's go back there right now to June 7th. Are you looking at Mr. Murdaugh?
Yes,
Okay. Y'all knew each other?
Yes.
Did you smell any alcohol on him?
No.
Okay. Did he appear to be under the influence of anything to you? Alcohol, drugs, anything else?
No.
Could he understand what Brian Murdaugh was asking to him as far as you knew? Did he understand your questions?
Yes, as far as I knew.
And could you understand his responses? Just talking?
Yes.
Okay. And were his answers to you timely?
Yes, they were.
Subject matter appropriate?
Yes.
When you asked him if you could take a gunshot residue, did he comply?
He complied.
And I believe there were just 2 used this time. They used to do 4.
Yep.
Can you show the jury how you do it specifically?
You'll see it's labeled. It's pretty self-explanatory. On here, it has the left hand, right hand.
You mind touching me and just do it on me like you did on him?
I can. Pops off over me. Come on.
All right, and what's that one marked on there?
This is for the left hand.
Okay.
It has a flat circle inside the cap. Touch all the fingers, thumb, put the hand over the back of the hand, and full extent of the fingers.
Okay.
Put the cap back
Did you
on.
place it back?
Yes, and you put it back inside the bag.
Okay.
And you move on to the next one.
All right.
Do the same thing with the other hand.
Same thing with the other hand.
Yes.
Go ahead and do it, please. And so this whole time you're that close to him and you're doing that?
Yes.
Were his hands shaking?
Do not recall his hand shaking.
Now, after you do that, and I got a couple other questions I'll let you sit down, I'll ask you if you don't mind.
Okay.
Do you, to be right where we are now, to tell them what we're doing, do you document it?
Yes.
Okay. And, Jim. We'll show you what's 300. Does this relate to what we're doing right now, Sergeant?
It does.
And you're on a 300 without objection?
No, it's admitted.
Now, Sergeant, does it say what time you just took that gunshot, potential gunshot residue evidence from the defendant?
Yes, it's right here at the bottom.
And did you fill this out?
I did.
You put your name at the top,
Yes.
badge number,
Everything but this. This is not me.
and date of birth? It's got the suspect's name, Richard Alexander Murdaugh.
Right.
And his date of birth's what?
5/27/68.
Now, you didn't know that, did you? You didn't know
No.
his date of birth. So did you have to ask him?
Yes.
Did he have any trouble telling you his date of birth?
No.
Okay. So you put that down when he told you. Subject is living, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and we'll bring that out with SLED later, but you took the sample off a live individual?
Yes.
No question about it. All right. And you filled out the rest of the form, correct?
I did.
No gunshot wound?
No.
No, it says any debris or blood or subject, this is what the form says. Any debris or blood or subjects on the hand, and what'd you mark?
No.
So does that mean you had to look at his hands to mark no?
Yes.
Okay, and so when you were looking at his hands, did you see any debris or blood on suspect's hands?
No, I did not.
And you looked at it?
Right.
Okay. How would you describe them?
Well, I would call his hands clean.
And underneath here, it says lawyer, Hunting, the rest of it's
Well,
in
ask
evidence.
some questions, yeah.
Okay, all right. And he signed it, correct?
No.
Okay, that's your signature, my bad, I couldn't see. Okay. One final question while I've got you up here. Did you observe what he was wearing? His shirt, his
I
shorts,
remember
his
his shirt.
shoes?
I do not remember his shoes or his pants or what he had on. I do remember his shirt.
Okay. And can you describe the shirt?
It was a white T-shirt.
Did it appear to have any blood on it from looking right here?
Now, naked eye, I didn't see any.
Okay. Did it appear to be dirty?
No.
And is this also the chain of custody that you filled out for the GSR?
Yes,
Okay, and you turned it over, I believe, to Agent Worley?
that's Worley.
Okay. I believe 12 without objection, you can have a seat there.
Okay.
Admitted.
Now, if referring to states 300 again, down at the bottom, it's got date and time shooting occurred, it's got 6/7/21.
So when the shooting occurred, yes,
Okay, and where'd you get that information from?
from other people on the scene.
Okay, and time, what time does it have by there?
I have 10 p.m.
And where'd you get that from? You know?
More likely it was my supervisor told me on scene.
Can I see that? And the time this collected was 11:15, correct?
That's correct.
Sergeant Ryan, one of those individuals that you collected the gunshot, performed the gunshot residue kit on, and the individual you described as his hands as clean to see in the courtroom.
Yes, he is.
Would you please point him out for the ladies and gentlemen?
He has a gray blazer and white button-up shirt.
We'd like the record to reflect, that's all we have. Thank you, Judge.
That's cross-examination.
Deputy Barnes, this individual right here, the defendant Murdaugh, Richard Alexander Murdaugh, consented to you taking his GSR, correct?
Yes.
And he cooperated with you fully that night, correct?
Yes, he did.
And you had talked about a case that he had worked, and he was a prosecutor of a criminal drug case in this courthouse or maybe Tampa, but
Right.
right? And you worked on that case, not only with Richard Alexander Murdaugh, but his father, Randolph Murdaugh, correct?
That's correct.
And that was a drug prosecution of a defendant who was suspected to be involved in the Cowboys drug gang, is that correct?
He was an affiliate, yes.
And that was a dangerous outfit that a lot of folks were prosecuted, is that correct?
Basis for the objection.
Never mind, I withdraw.
No.
Could you ask the question again, please?
The Cowboys were known for being dangerous in this area, correct?
Yes, sir.
And in that case, I think you thought maybe 5 years, but it could have been sooner than that, 2 or 3 years ago?
It could have been. It's been some years. I'm not sure exactly what year it was.
Yes. Now, you were showing this aerial photograph, and this is exhibit number 303. Have you been out to the property since the night on June the 7th?
Yes.
Okay. Now, this aerial photograph, you don't know what date this photograph was taken, do you?
I do not.
But you do know that this land here, frankly, right through there, were you aware that at one point in time, that area right there was used as a runway?
I did not know that.
But you do know that pine trees were planted all through here, correct? And
There are trees there, yes.
there's a stand of pine trees there that are not in this photograph. Is that fair?
That's fair.
Okay, thank you. And the, now the form, if I can find it, sir. The collection form asks, it says subject's full name, and the subject was Mr. Murdaugh.
That's correct.
Okay. And did you, I mean, was he cordial and respectful
Oh, yes.
to you?
Yes.
And have you been around him on multiple occasions, I take it, working on that case and perhaps other things?
A few times, yes.
And in your presence, has he always been respectful to law enforcement?
Yes.
Has always treated you with respect?
Yes.
Did he treat you with respect on the night of June the 7th?
Yes, he did.
And did he tell you he understood that you had to do a job and take his gunshot residue off his hands, correct?
That's right.
And he was shook up, was he not?
Yes, he was shook up.
Now, you showed how the collection is done and how you put the stamp on the front and on the back. Did you do a thorough collection of Mr. Murdaugh's hands that night?
Yes.
And did you intentionally leave any part of his hand untested?
No.
And you did your level best to get every particle of GSR off his hands, according to using that equipment that you had.
The way I was trained and taught, yes.
And were you aware that earlier in the night, after he called 911, that he went up to the house to get a shotgun and came back down? And when first responding deputy, I believe it was Green, came to the scene, that he seized that shotgun? Did you know that when you got?
At that time, no.
You learned it later?
Yes.
And you're aware that gunshot residue can transfer from a gun onto a subject's hands, correct?
It's possible.
Okay. Now, you don't do any testing of gunshot residue, do you?
No.
That's done back at the SLED lab?
That's right.
Okay. And you didn't test any gunshot residue, well, I'll scratch that, I apologize. Did you collect any gunshot residue or attempted to collect any gunshot residue off any other part of Mr. Murdaugh's body?
No.
So you didn't try to take anything off his legs or?
No, the test is not for that.
Okay. Later in that evening, his clothes were collected for gunshot residue testing. Were you involved in that in any form or fashion?
No.
Deputy Varnadoe, I'm going to show you an exhibit, Exhibit 59. I just want to ask you if 59 fairly and accurately depicts Paul Murdaugh as you saw him lying on the ground outside the feed room that night.
Yes.
Your Honor, I introduced Defendants 59 into evidence under seal. I'm not going to publish it. We just need to get it in for the record without objection, I believe.
That's correct.
Submitted.
May I have the court's indulgence? That's all I have, Deputy. Thank you.
Just one follow-up. He was asking about that case you testified in. Alex Murdaugh did he call you as an expert on how to interpret whistle from an inmate's phone call who was trying to hide a weapon?
That's what I understood it to be, yes.
Whistle.
I wasn't part of the actual investigation.
That's all.
Anything further?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor.
We'll call your next witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. We call Rogan Gibson.
Spell your last name.
Rogan Gibson, Gibson.
Mr. Gibson, how you doing today?
Good.
Ask the court reporter something, we'll give her a chance to catch up. Good. Mr. Gibson, I want you to introduce yourself to the jury a little bit. Tell us, where you grew up, where you went to high school, just a little bit about yourself before we get to your testimony.
I went to Wade Hampton High School. I'm from Hampton.
All right. And you working now?
I am.
All right. What field do you work in?
The agriculture field.
All right. Why don't you see if you can pull that mic up just a little bit and scoot up just a hair so you're speaking into it. I appreciate it. You said you're working in agriculture, is that right?
That's correct.
All right. And currently still working in agriculture?
That's correct.
Back in June of 2021, what were you doing? Working in agriculture?
That's correct. Farming.
What kind of job did you have?
I was farming, operating equipment.
Operating equipment. Okay. And let me ask you, did you get to know Paul Murdaugh?
I did.
All right. And tell me, how old were you when you got to know Paul Murdaugh?
I've known him all my life, real good, probably when I was 11, 12 years old.
And how did y'all get to meet one another? How did you become closer?
I lived next to him
Okay. And when did that happen?
when I was 11, 12 years old.
11 to 12? Y'all went to school together?
Paul was a little bit younger than me, and I didn't go to school with him.
Okay. When y'all were growing up, what kind of things y'all like to do together?
We enjoyed the outdoors, hunting, fishing, hanging around the farm.
Were you close friends with Paul until the day he was murdered?
I was.
Tell the jury just a little bit about Paul. Give me just a little sense of who he was as a person.
He loved the outdoors, hunting, fishing, hanging around. Really enjoyed the farm out there in Moselle.
Fun guy to be around?
He was.
Over the years, as you got to be closer friends with Paul, did you get to be closer friends with the rest of the family?
I was.
And was that just Paul and his brother and his parents, or was it sort of the Murdaughs, the larger family as well?
The whole family.
And over those years, as you became close with them, how close would you say? How close did you become?
Real close, like a second family.
Like a second family to you?
Yes, sir.
Paul, did you have a nickname for him, or did he have a nickname?
Rooster.
His brother Buster, did he have a name or a nickname?
Called him Buzz.
Bus. What'd you call Maggie?
Miss Maggie.
What did you call Mr. Randolph, Paul's grandfather?
Handsome.
Handsome. How about Miss Libby, his wife, Paul's grandmother?
Yum.
Yeah. How about Maggie's parents? Did you have nicknames for them?
I called him Papa T and Grandma.
Papa T and Grandma?
That's correct.
M-A-R at the end?
That's correct.
What'd you call Alec?
Mr. Ellick, or Big Red.
Mr. Alec or Big Red? You said they were like a second family to you.
That's correct.
Being that close to this family, did you frequently go out to Moselle?
All the time.
You ever go to, did they have other properties too that you ever went to?
He did.
What were the other properties they had? And hold on for the sirens if you would. What were the other properties that they had?
Edisto Beach, we went there a lot.
They had a house at Esto Beach,
That's correct.
and any other properties while you were growing up that you recall?
The property in Hampton, the house in Hampton.
All right. Did they ultimately sell that property?
They did.
You remember about how long ago that was?
Not real sure.
When you would go out, when did they get Moselle? I mean, just roughly.
I believe it was like my freshman year in high school, so 14,
2014, something like that?
no, it was, I graduated in 14, so probably around 2010 maybe.
Okay. And over the years, did you spend a lot of time out there?
I did.
What were some of the things that you would do with Paul out there?
We would hunt, fish, just hang around.
Ride around the property?
We worked the food plots with equipment.
I got States 303 right here on this poster board. Can I ask you to come on down with the judge's permission, and let's kind of point out some things to the jury.
you recognize this image? And what is that? Keep your voice up if you could.
That's a picture of the overview of the Moselle property,
Okay. And where's the residence in this picture?
right here.
And is there a driveway to that residence?
That would be the main driveway.
Do you see Moselle Road on this particular image? Going right down there? All right. What's this red roof building right there?
That's the old airplane hangar.
Okay. And did y'all have a name for that? Did you call it the hangar?
Yeah, the shed, the hangar.
The shed or the hangar? Any other structures out there?
That was the newer shed, the tractor shed. It's all kennel.
Okay.
And that's the skinning shed.
Skin and shed? And just real quick, what's the skin and shed for?
This process, wild game out there. Skin wild game out there.
Was there a driveway to that part of the property?
There was.
Is that where it went right there?
What's that?
That's where it went right there that you just pointed?
Yeah, the driveway to the shed is right there.
Was that driveway commonly used?
It was.
Was there, what's the structure right here?
That's the old cabin, the hunting cabin.
And how about across the street? Was there any structures across the street?
There was.
All right, what was it there
There
across?
was a shooting house.
All right, and can you just point roughly where that be? Right at the top of the picture? Okay. All right, and what is this right here?
It's a pond.
All right. And when y'all were, what was the shooting house used for?
We sight in rifles, shooting kind of at that angle. So there's a target down here.
Would y'all shoot rifles from the shooting house?
We would.
What about shotguns? Would y'all shoot those over at that shooting area?
Yeah, most of the time we shot them around the pond.
Around the pond? Okay. Is this a line of trees right here?
It is.
And on the other side of that line of trees, what did y'all call that?
The dove field.
The dove field? All right, you can go ahead and have a seat for me, thank you. You mentioned that y'all like to ride the property and shoot and hunt out there, is that right?
That's correct.
What kind of hunting would y'all do out there?
Anything we could hunt.
Okay. Well, give me some examples, if you would, please.
Hog hunt, deer, turkeys,
Hog hunting, deer, and turkeys.
dove, quail.
Let me ask you this, turkey season, do you know when that is in South Carolina?
It's like March, mid-March to early May.
Okay, all right, so it's a fairly short period of time in that time period?
That's correct.
You mentioned hogs first. Tell me about the hog hunting. How would y'all go hog hunting?
A lot of times we'd shoot them at night with a thermal scope.
Okay. And what weapon would y'all use to shoot those hogs with the thermal scope?
300 blackout.
And whose weapon was that?
I think it was Buster's.
Well, tell me about what you know about the blackouts, how the family got those blackouts.
They bought two of them, one for Paul and one for Buster.
Okay. And can you describe those two? Did you see both of them back in the day?
They were similar build. One was black, one was like a green tannish color.
Okay. And did anything ever happen to one of them?
Yes, one of them was stolen.
Okay. And were you present when that happened or around when that happened?
I wasn't present, I was just told about it.
All right. And what was the story you were told about that?
I was told somebody took it out of Paul's truck at a party.
At a party? Okay. How long ago was that?
I'm not exactly sure.
I mean, years?
Yes, it's been 5-6 years probably.
Okay. Let me show you something real quick. I'm going to show you what's already been entered into evidence in States 163, and we'll have you look at that image, and particularly what's there on that pool table. Do you recognize that?
That's a picture of a 300 blackout.
And is that the one that you and Paul would take hog hunting?
Yes, that's one of them.
You said one got stolen. To your knowledge, was there ever a replacement gun?
I don't remember a replacement. No,
You
sir.
don't remember replacement. You remember Paul using the black one, is that right?
That's correct, or either the green and tan one before it was stolen.
Before it was stolen,
That's correct.
5 or 6 years ago.
Correct.
What other guns did Paul use a lot that he favored?
He favored a super black Eagle shotgun 12 gauge.
All right, let me show you another image if I could. I'm going to show you what's already been admitted into evidence as States 3 and see if you recognize that.
I do.
All right, tell me what that is.
A Super Black Eagle.
All right, and do you specifically recognize that gun?
Yes,
And what gun is that?
that's Paul's gun.
And how can you tell?
The camo pattern and the strap.
Would Paul frequently have weapons with him when he was on the property or in his truck or that sort of thing?
He would.
All right, what sort of weapons would he frequently have with him?
A lot of times he carried the 300 Blackout in his vehicle, and then, I mean, sometimes pistols, different shotguns.
All right, would he carry that shotgun a lot as well?
Yes, I have seen him carry that shotgun.
We'll show you what's been frequently entered into evidence of States 4. And will you do me a favor? You see that box of gloves right there? Will you just put them on the floor behind you, just kind of out of the way? I'm going to have you look in here and see if you recognize that.
That's Super Black Eagle 3 of Paul's.
That's Paul's favorite shotgun.
That's correct.
What about deer? Did he have a weapon he liked hunting deer with?
He did. It was a 7mm 08.
Okay. Did Paul ever have any pistols to your knowledge or carry around any pistols?
He did sometimes. Yeah.
Sometimes. What were his favorite two guns? Or the most guns he most commonly had around?
Probably that 300 and Super Black Eagle. That's the ones I've seen him use the most.
Tell me about a little bit about the hog hunting. You said y'all would hunt them at night?
That's correct.
All right. And tell me how that works. What would y'all do? Y'all walking around? Y'all riding around? How does that go?
Most of the time we drove four-wheeler vehicle. We didn't hardly ever walk, but that scope, the thermal scope would pick up the heat.
Okay. And where on the property would y'all hunt?
All over.
The hogs you hunt all over?
That's correct.
When you and Paul were together hunting with that Blackout, did you usually have the gun and shooting, or did Paul usually have the gun and shooting?
It just depends.
Who had the gun more?
Probably Paul.
One guy's driving, the other guy's looking?
That's correct.
Is that something y'all did frequently?
A good bit, yes, sir.
If y'all ever killed a hog, what would y'all do with it?
Sometimes we would give it to people that wanted to butcher it. Sometimes we just let nature take its course, just leave it wherever it was shot at. It just depends. Sometimes we'd skin them out ourselves.
Or hogs a nuisance animal?
They are.
We're talking a little bit about Paul and who he was. How was Paul with his cell phone?
He was on his cell phone a lot.
Let me ask you a little bit about Miss Maggie. You mentioned before that the family had a couple of properties. In the summertime, where did Miss Maggie prefer to stay?
She liked to stay at Edison
And did you know why she preferred Edisto?
because of the yellow flies at Moselle.
The yellow flies.
That's correct.
What about Paul and Alec? Where would they stay most of the time?
Well, Paul, if he was back home, he'd stay at Moselle, but a lot of times he was in Columbia or Charleston.
Did he have an apartment in Charleston?
Not to my knowledge in Charleston.
I'm sorry, in Columbia. I meant to
In
say.
Columbia, yes.
Okay, thank you. Back in June 7th of 2021, you were working in agriculture,
That's correct.
working in farming,
That's correct.
hard work.
Yes, sir.
What time did you have to get up in the morning to go to work?
Normally get up about 5 o'clock.
5 o'clock. Where were you staying at that point in time?
I was staying at my girlfriend's house in Beaufort.
In Beaufort? You don't have to say her last name. What was her first name?
Mary Ann.
Mary Ann? Okay. And why were you staying at Beaufort at that period, at that point in time? Was that where your house was or not?
No, my house was not there. I was working on St. Helena. It made it a closer ride for me to go to work.
So you were staying with your girlfriend because of that?
That's correct.
Did you have a dog at that time?
I did.
And what kind of dog?
Chocolate Lab.
Chocolate Lab. Still have the Chocolate Lab?
I do.
What's the dog's name?
Cash.
Cash. How old was Cash about that time?
I'm guessing he was a puppy, 4, 6 months old maybe.
Were you able to keep Cash with you when you were staying at your girlfriend's in Beaufort?
I was not able to
And why was that?
because she wasn't allowed. She was renting a house. We couldn't keep one there.
What arrangements did you make for Cash when you were staying in Beaufort and you couldn't keep him at your girlfriend's house?
I would leave him at the kennels at Moselle.
And tell me how that came to be. How did you work that out?
I asked Mr. Ellick if I could leave him there. I'd be gone at a week at a time. Just leave him there for a week, pick him back up when I come back home on the weekend.
All right. Did you leave food for him, that sort of thing?
I did.
So where was he staying when he was at Moselle during the week when you were working?
In the kennel.
In the kennel. Describe the kennels a little bit for the jury. What was the structure like?
It was like a lean-to shed with about somewhere around 8 kennels under it, a feed room on the end.
And Cash was staying in one of those.
That's correct.
You'd go get him on the weekend.
Friday night or either Saturday, yes.
Where would you take him then?
Back to my house
All right. And just where were you living at that time?
in Colleton County.
In Carlton County. You get up at 5 a.m. and get to work. About what time do you get to work, working farming?
I'd roughly get to work somewhere around 7:30.
7:30. And then what time would you get off?
It all depended.
What time
I
typically
mean,
would you get off?
5, 6, 7 o'clock.
Just depending on how much work needed to get done?
That's correct.
Were you pretty tired when you got home?
I was.
During the course of that day, June 7th, 2021, did you have any communications with Paul?
I did.
What's the first one you remember?
Sometime around lunchtime.
What did y'all communicate? Did y'all talk on the phone? Did y'all text or what?
Yeah, I think he called me and told me about the sunflowers had been sprayed in the Dove field and they were dead.
Okay. What did he say about that?
Said that he was getting ready to replant them.
They've been sprayed with some Roundup or something?
That's correct.
Did y'all talk about anything else that you remember?
Not that I remember.
While I'm thinking about it, I asked you about Paul's use of a cell phone. Do you know where he kept his cell phone when it wasn't in his hand?
Most of the time in his pockets.
Was he typically one to respond pretty quick to you? If you were
Normally-
talking about something?
Normally, yeah, we were talking about something. He would respond pretty quick.
That evening, did you talk to Paul again after that initial conversation?
I did.
All right. And when was that, roughly?
Around 8:40.
Okay. And what was that conversation about?
He called and asked if something was wrong with the dog's tail.
Okay. And was that the first you were hearing about that?
That's correct.
Tell me about your conversation.
I told him that, I wasn't real sure. I just dropped him off there Sunday. And told him let's try to see if he can get me a picture or FaceTime me and let me see what was going on with the dog's tail.
All right. Where was Paul when he called you?
He was at the dog kennels.
And how do you know that?
I could hear the dogs barking in the original call.
Is he describing to you what he's seeing on Cash's tail?
That's correct.
And Cash was at the kennels?
He was.
Did you hear any other voices when you were on the phone with Paul about 8:40?
I did.
And what voices did you hear?
I heard Miss Maggie,
And who else did you hear?
and I thought it was Mr. Ellick that I heard.
You thought it was Mr. Ellick. You talked to Paul, and what did y'all talk about? What was he going to do?
He was going to try to FaceTime me. He
And-
said, you know how the service is out here. He said, if I can't get the FaceTime to go through, I'll send you a video.
And why was he gonna FaceTime you? What's the difference between FaceTime and a regular call?
So I could see what was wrong with the dog.
And y'all talked about how the service is out here?
That's correct.
And what did you mean by that?
Most of the time, you got enough service to make a call. I mean, sometimes the calls will break up, but a FaceTime, couldn't really get a whole lot of service to make the FaceTime call. It's kind of lagging.
Y'all have had problems with that before?
That's correct.
Did y'all discuss what to do if the FaceTime didn't work?
We did.
And what was the discussion?
He was gonna send me a video of it, of the dog.
He was gonna video it and then do what with it? Text it to you?
That's correct.
Is that the last time you ever talked to your friend?
That was.
Did y'all try to FaceTime?
We did.
Did it work?
It came through, but it was kind of lagging. I couldn't tell what was going on.
And then never heard from him again?
That's correct.
Did you ever get that video?
I did not.
After you never got the video, did you try to reach back out to Paul to see if you could get him to respond?
I did. I called him a few times and texted him.
Did he ever respond?
He didn't.
Did you reach out to anyone else trying to get Paul to respond?
I texted Miss Maggie.
Did she respond?
She didn't.
About what time do you think you went to bed that night?
I'm not exactly sure. It was sometime right after I probably tried to contact him.
And you never heard from Miss Maggie either?
I did.
Did you ever talk to her at all that day?
I did.
About what time do you think you went to bed?
I'm gonna say somewhere around 10 o'clock.
10 o'clock. You a pretty sound sleeper?
That's correct.
Been working on the farm all day?
That's correct.
Did some calls come in that you didn't realize because you were asleep?
Yes, I woke up with some missed calls
What time did you wake up the next morning?
sometime around 5:30.
When did you find out that your friend Paul and his mother Maggie had been murdered?
That same time, 5:30.
How'd you find out?
I called one of my friends that had left me, or I had a missed call from, and he told me what had happened.
And tell me his first name, please.
Nolan.
What'd you do after that?
We got a little old boy up and got him to school without talking about it a whole lot, and then we headed back home.
And by home, you mean Colleton County?
Colleton County, that's correct.
And where'd you go from there?
I went to my house first, then I ended up going to Moselle
About what time you think you got there?
sometime maybe 8:30, 9 o'clock.
What'd you see when you got there? Where'd you go on the property?
I went to the dog kennels.
And who'd you see there? Did you talk to anyone there?
I did, and I seen John Marvin, but I didn't speak to him.
Did you talk to anybody at the scene when you first went there?
The only person I seen was John Marvin.
What'd you do after that?
My cousin let the dog out the kennel.
That being cash?
That's correct.
Did you take cash with you?
I did.
And where'd y'all go from there?
To the convenience store down the road from the house.
And who'd you meet there?
I met a game warden.
And what'd you do after that? Did you have a conversation?
I did. I had a conversation with him, and he said that law enforcement was going to be wanting to speak with me. And I told him, I said, well, if you got a contact, let's get them up here and let's talk.
And so did you wait for law enforcement to arrive?
I did.
Do you remember who you talked to?
I did.
And who'd you talk to?
Jeff Croft and Katie McAllister.
And did they do an interview of you?
They did.
Did they ask you about your communications with Paul the night before?
They did.
And did they ask you to see your cell phone?
They did.
Did they take screenshots of your cell phone?
That's correct.
Were you showing them your communications the night before with Paul and Maggie and others the night before?
Yes, sir.
Were you holding up the phone and they were taking screenshots?
Yes, sir.
I'm going to show you what's been marked for identification. 165, 166, 167, 168, 169, 170, 171, and 172. And just flip those real quick and see if you recognize those images. You recognize those?
I do.
And what are those?
That's all activity on my phone. Missed calls, text.
Stand by for one second. Your Honor, just out of abundance of caution, I believe these are in evidence, but just to be clear, 165, 166, 167, 168, 169, 170, 171, and 172. We would make sure those are in evidence, move those in evidence and leave without objection.
That's correct, no objection.
Admit it. All right. May I have the Elmo, please? Mr. Gibson, I'm going to put these up on the screen. You got a screen up there, and so take a look at that, okay?
Okay.
All right, 165. Can y'all turn the screen around for me, please? And that's a screenshot that Jeff Croft took of your phone that on June 8th, 2021, the next day?
That's correct.
All right, and that reflects a call from who?
Paul.
And which Paul is that?
Paul Murdaugh.
All right, and what time is that call?
8:40 p.m.
And how long does it last?
4 minutes.
And is that the call you just described to this jury?
It is.
The call y'all were talking about Cash the dog and trying to figure out the tail?
It is.
I'm going to show you what's been marked as 166. Now, again, you told this jury that when y'all got off the call, he was going to try to FaceTime you, and if not, send a video.
That's correct.
All right, I'll show you 166. Is that another screenshot of it?
It is.
And that's the FaceTime call, is that right?
That's correct.
8:44 p.m.
That's correct.
for 11 seconds.
That's correct.
That FaceTime didn't work though, did it?
Yeah, it came through, but it was lagging. We couldn't communicate through it.
So y'all stopped.
That's correct.
And you were expecting what after that?
A video.
I'm going to show you what's been marked as States 167. Are these texts that were on your phone?
They are.
And who are those texts between? Who are you trying to text right there down those last two bubbles?
I was sending those texts to Paul.
All right. It's got a little glare on it. But what time is that text right there?
8:49 p.m.
And that's on June 7th, 2021?
That's correct.
And what are you telling Paul right there? Can you read that to the jury and then explain what you were trying to say to Paul, please?
See if you can get a good picture of it. Mary Ann wants to send it to a girl we know that's a vet. Tell him to sit and stay, and he should move around too much.
Who were you talking about when you said tell him to sit and stay?
Cash, the dog.
Did you send another text right here?
I did.
What time is that? Can you read it?
9:58 p.m.
What do you say?
Yo.
And when you say yo to Paul, what are you trying to get him to do?
Just trying to get him to call me back or text me back.
Because you hadn't gotten that video.
That's correct.
I'll show you what's been marked as 168. States. Is that another screenshot of your phone?
That is.
These are missed calls from June 7th, 2021?
That's correct.
Or these are outgoing calls?
They are.
Who are you trying to call?
Paul Murdaugh.
Tell me the times you tried to call him. Start from the bottom, please.
9:10 p.m., 9:29 p.m., 9:42 p.m., 9:57 p.m.
Did he ever respond?
No, sir.
I'll show you what's been marked as States 169. Is that another screenshot of your phone?
It is.
Who are you trying to call right there?
Paul,
What's that last call?
10:08 p.m.
Did he answer that call?
He did not.
Show you what's been marked as states 170. Is that another screenshot of your phone?
It is.
And who are you trying to text right here?
Miss Maggie,
What time did you try to text her?
9:34 p.m.
And what did you text her?
Tell Paul to call me.
Tell Paul to call me.
Yes, sir.
Did she ever respond?
She did not.
You said you woke up the next morning on June 8th, 2021, and you saw you had some missed calls. Is that right?
That's correct.
I'm going to show you what's been marked as states 171. Was this also a screenshot or a picture that Special Agent Croft took of your phone?
It is.
All right. And who are those missed calls from?
Mr. Ellick,
And what time did they come in?
10:21 p.m. and 10:24 p.m.
And that would have been on June 7th, 2021?
That's correct.
Were you asleep at that time?
I was.
Unaware they were coming in?
That's correct.
172, is that another screenshot of your phone?
It is.
And those other missed calls that came in?
10:25 p.m. and 10:30 p.m.
When you spoke to Special Agent Croft on June 8th, 2021, did you tell him and Special Agent McAllister who you thought you heard on that phone call at 8:40?
I did.
And who did you say you heard?
I thought it was Mr. Ellick, but I wasn't exactly sure.
Did you give him a percentage?
I did.
What'd you say?
99%.
That you heard Mr. Alec on that phone call at 8:40?
That's correct.
As time went on after the murders, did you go to Moselle where all the family and friends were gathering?
I did.
Were you there a fair amount?
Probably the whole part of that later that week.
While you were there at the house where the family and friends had gathered, did anyone ever ask you about your last contact with Paul?
There was.
And who asked you?
Grandma.
And that'd be Miss Brandstutter,
That's correct.
Maggie's mother?
That's correct.
And what did you say?
Told her, yeah, that I talked to Paul about the dog and told her that I heard Miss Maggie in the background and I heard a male voice that I thought was Mr. Ellick.
Was he in the room then?
Yes,
Did he stand up and say, "No, I wasn't there"?
he did.
Did you ever have any conversation with Alex Murdaugh about what happened that night?
No, sir.
Did he ever ask you about whether or not you heard him on that phone that night?
No, sir.
Did he ever tell you what he did that night?
No, sir.
Did you ever ask him what he did that night?
No, sir.
Not a subject you wanted to talk about, was it?
That's correct.
Over time, as the months passed following the murder of Paul and Maggie, you were ultimately interviewed by law enforcement and other part of the process and that sort of thing, is that correct?
That's correct.
And as time went on and you were asked about who you heard on the phone that night, that call at 8:40, you said, "Hey, I thought it was Alec, but I can't be sure."
That's correct.
Told law enforcement the night of, 99% sure, correct?
Say that question again, please.
Told law enforcement the next day, June 8th, that you were 99% sure, is that correct?
That's correct.
As time went on, you said, "I thought it was Alec, but I can't be sure."
That's correct.
In November of 2022, did law enforcement ask you to come in and look at a video?
They did.
And did you watch that video?
I did.
And what was on that video?
It was the video. Paul was supposed to take a cash. Cash was on the video.
And did you hear Recognize the voices on there?
I did.
Did you recognize the voices of your second family?
I did.
And what voices did you hear?
Paul's, Miss Maggie, and Miss Stella.
And how sure are you now?
Positive.
100%?
That's correct.
One second for the computer to boot up.
So I'll stand for a moment. Okay.
Before we play the video, I want to ask a couple more questions. When you received that phone call from Paul at the kennels at 8:40 p.m. on the night of June 7th, 2021, did Paul sound normal to you?
He did.
Did he sound stressed to you?
He did not.
Did he sound like someone was there that he didn't know?
No, sir.
Did he sound worried?
He did.
Did you hear Maggie's voice?
I did.
Did she sound stressed?
She did.
Did she sound worried?
No,
Did she sound normal?
she did.
Did she sound like there was somebody there she didn't know?
No, sir.
Or that she was in danger?
No, sir.
Did you hear Alex's voice?
What I thought was his voice at the time, yeah.
When Maggie or Paul would go down to the kennels, how would they usually get there?
They would drive, sometimes Miss Maggie would walk or ride a bike. If they had an ATV or a golf cart in the yard, sometimes they would drive that.
Paul more likely to be one to ride or one to drive down there?
Most of the time he would drive.
Was it usual for the family to go down there sometimes and let the dogs out?
It was.
Let them run around?
That's correct.
Did Miss Maggie like to do that?
She did.
Was it common, to your knowledge, for guns to be left down at the kennels?
Sometimes there was, yeah.
I'm gonna play that video for you, okay?
Okay.
Get it. Get that. Quick. This is cheating. Come here, Cash. Come here.
Is that the video you watched back in November 2022?
It is,
Where's that video taken?
at the kennels.
You recognize your dog?
I do.
You recognize Paul's voice?
Yes, sir.
You recognize Maggie's voice?
Yes, sir.
You recognize Alex's voice?
Yes, sir.
100%.
Yes, sir.
Can you point out Alex Murdaugh, the person whose voice you recognize in this video in this courtroom, please?
Sitting right there in the gray jacket.
Please let the record reflect he's identified the defendant. Thank you, Mr. Gibson. Nothing further.
Good afternoon, Rogan.
How you doing?
We've met many times, haven't we?
Yes, sir.
Tell the jury more about Paul, please. What did y'all like to do together?
We loved hunting, fishing, just hanging around. We loved staying at the beach, going to the sandbars. He could get along with just about anybody.
See, one of your best friends?
He is.
Is this a hard day for you?
Yes, sir.
Did you live one summer in the cabin there on the property?
Yes, me, Buster, and Nolan lived in the cabin, and Paul was there a lot.
And when you got a house of your own, I mean, it was just right down the road, wasn't it?
Yes, sir.
Down Moselle Road?
Yes, sir.
It was your grandparents' house or you moved into?
That's correct.
And, but before that, Ms. Maggie and Big Red over here, Mr. Alec, I mean, they treated you as family, didn't they?
That's correct. They did.
And Paul was like a brother to you,
Yes, sir.
and Ms. Maggie was like a second mom to you,
Yes, sir.
and Mr. Alec was like a second dad.
Yes, sir, he was.
And could you tell the jury what you observed Alec's relationship was, starting with you? What was his relationship with you?
We had a good relationship. I mean, he treated me like one of his own. I mean, we had fun. He gave me permission to hunt the property.
Did you have permission to come and go and down at the shop?
I did.
Did you have permission to use any of the equipment?
Yes, sir.
And did you help out on the farm for game management and stuff?
I did.
Okay. And can you tell the jury a little bit about Mr. Alec's relationship with his son Paul?
Very good relationship. Very good.
Were they close?
They were. Nothing happened without Paul telling Mr. Ellick about it.
And did, juries heard some, Alec interviewed on the tape, Darius, about how the Moselle property was Paul's passion.
It was.
You agree with that?
Yes, sir.
Why do you think it was his passion? What was he so passionate about out there?
He just loved hunting and using the equipment to manage for wild game, fishing.
Right.
He loved all of that.
Was Paul a good friend?
Yes, sir.
Was he a loyal friend?
He was.
Was he a loyal son?
Yes, sir.
Tell me about Miss Maggie.
She was like a second mother to me. Always took care of me. Treated me like one of hers.
Did you spend time down at Edisto?
I did.
And you and Paul and Ms. Maggie, sometimes just the three of you down there?
It was.
Okay. What did Ms. Maggie like to do?
She liked the beach.
When they were down at Edisto, were you the only friend welcome at the Edisto house, or what was it like?
There was many friends that were welcome to the house.
Like adult friends, or was
Most,
Ms. Maggie, Mr. Alex home? Was it open to all of Paul and Buster's friends?
it was open to all of Paul and Buster's friends.
And was that the case at Edisto?
That's correct.
Was that the case at Moselle?
It was.
Did it appear to you that Mr. Alec enjoyed being around his family?
Yes, sir, he did.
And did you enjoy being around Mr. Alec and Ms. Maggie?
Yes, sir.
You remember, and I apologize, I'm gonna get the date wrong, but do you remember in early 2019 that Paul was in a boating accident?
Yes, sir.
And a beautiful young woman died in that accident, didn't they?
Yes, sir.
Her name was Mallory Beach.
That's correct.
And Paul was eventually charged, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Did Paul receive any threats or harassments that you knew about as a result of that boating accident?
None that I thought was real serious. I mean, he mentioned it, that, you know, he'd get people comment about it, but nothing that I thought was real serious.
Did he, would people just mouth off to him when he went out, bars or just with his friends?
Yes, sir. He had mentioned that.
But was it anything that you thought was serious in nature?
No, and a lot of times I wasn't there when that happened, so I didn't think it was that serious.
Let me back up. I skipped over something. You played sports when you were a kid growing up?
Yes, sir.
I think your dad was a coach, was he?
Yes, sir.
And was Mr. Alec a coach to Paul and Buster?
He was.
And did Mr. Alec, when he wasn't coaching, would he and Ms. Maggie come to all the sporting events for the kids?
They were always there.
Can you think of them ever missing a sporting event for Buster and Paul?
Not that I can remember.
And they come to your sporting events?
Yes.
Now, and Paul had an apartment in 2021. He was starting to go back to school at Carolina. Do you remember that? He was in college.
Yes, sir.
School year.
That's correct.
And then in June, he had moved back home. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Was he living at Moselle for the most part?
I think he was staying in Moselle some, but kind of all over the place.
And sometimes he stayed with his Uncle John Marmon down at Bluffton?
Yes, sir.
And he was working with his Uncle John Marmon, wasn't
That's correct.
he? Okay. Now, when he was on the farm, when he was at Moselle, now this gets a little confusing for me. Frankly, let me just ask you. Can you tell the jury about all the farm trucks there at Moselle?
Yeah, there was a lot of different vehicles. They could be used anywhere from ATVs to tractors.
Well, let's just talk about the trucks. So
Okay.
what was Paul's primary truck?
Around the farm, most of the time, F-250.
All right, but what was his primary mode of transportation? Was it a truck?
It was a F-150.
And was it white?
It was.
Okay, and did he drive that around the farm some?
Sometimes, yes.
And then there was a big F-250.
That's correct.
And that was also white, wasn't it?
That's correct.
Did that have a name, the big F-250 farm truck?
Yeah, White Boy. That was the older F-250.
And then there was another one called Dolly?
That's correct. That was a newer F-250.
That was a newer F-250. And then there was there a black truck?
There was.
And that was a F-150?
It was.
And was that Buster's old truck?
It was.
So there were so Buster had another vehicle, and his old F-150 stayed at Moselle, correct?
That's correct.
And then Paul had his white 150 pickup, and where he was not at Moselle, there were still 3 other trucks at Moselle, right?
That's correct.
Dolly, White Boy, and then Buster's old black pickup.
That's correct.
And when Paul was there, he would drive any one of those trucks, wouldn't he,
Yes, sir.
on the farm? And no matter which one he was driving, he would most often have some sort of firearm in the truck, right?
That's correct. Most of the time on the farm, he had a firearm in the vehicle.
And those trucks, they would either stay down at the shed, the workshop, or at the house. I mean, there was no set place for them, correct?
That's correct.
And they didn't lock the trucks up, did they?
Not normally.
I mean, and then Paul would leave guns in the trucks, wouldn't he?
That's correct.
I mean, Paul would leave guns everywhere, just about, wouldn't he?
Yeah, he could leave. He left a lot of stuff different places.
Yeah. Did he ever leave any guns at your house?
I'm sure he has over the years.
Okay. And then he would leave guns in the workshop, right?
I have seen guns in the workshop, yes.
And then did they keep the workshop locked?
It just depends. Not a whole lot, but I have remembered it's being locked, yes.
Was it more often not locked than locked?
Probably more recent. Yeah, it wasn't locked.
Did they, if someone were bent on mischief, would it be a hard thing to go up on that property and steal stuff?
Probably not around the sheds. It wouldn't be too hard.
And if someone were bent on mischief, would it be a hard thing to go open up and rifle through or look through White Boy or Dolly or Buster's old black pickup truck?
That is possible, yes.
And there were no security cameras down at the old airplane hangar, the workshop, the kennels, and the pole barn and skinning sheds, were there?
Not that I was ever aware of.
Okay. And there were no, in the cabin where you guys stayed that summer, there was no security cameras there either, right?
Not that I knew of.
And was that cabin, did it stay locked?
Sometimes it was locked, sometimes it wasn't.
Paul left guns there too, didn't he?
I have seen guns in that cabin before, yes.
I want to, not turn this thing upside down, but you talked about handsome. Who's handsome?
Mr. Randolph Murdaugh.
And Ms. Libby is who?
Yum.
Who's Ms. Libby?
Yum.
M. And that's Paul and Buster's grandparents, right?
That's correct.
And you know where they live?
Now meet him.
Almeda. And just generally, where's Almeda?
It's on the outside of Barnville.
Okay, is it like a crossroads?
It's a veer off. Go toward Ridgeland. If you veer off, if you stay on that road, you go to Embassy.
Right. If you're coming out of Hampton toward Varnville, then where the veer off is, that's called Almeda.
That's correct.
Now, to get to Alameda, and the most direct route, let me do this right, okay. So, can you see from back there?
I can.
And so this is the main house right here, correct?
That's correct.
And you can get down to Moselle Road by going one or two ways, right? You can either take a left and go down by the shop and the kennels, or you can go straight out the main driveway, is that right?
Yes, you can go out both ways.
But when you hit Moselle Road, would you turn right or left if you're going the most direct route to Alameda?
Turn right.
And be going down this way?
That's correct.
Okay. You were asking a little bit about Paul's cell phone usage. He was on it a lot.
He was on it a lot, yes, sir.
Yeah. And did the battery get down low pretty regularly?
Yes, he would let his phone die sometime, or he would lose it.
Well, and when it would get down low, did he have a habit of, not using it to try to keep him going all the way out?
Yes, I have seen that happen before.
And have you done that yourself?
Yes, sir.
And phone coverage, cell phone coverage on that property is somewhat, when I say that property, I'm talking about Moselle, somewhat spotty, isn't it?
It is.
And is there better coverage up at the house than down at the kennels?
I wouldn't think so.
Okay.
I mean, it's kind of hit and miss.
And you can be down at the kennels, and you can be, walk 10 yards one way, you'd have some coverage, 10 yards the other way, you wouldn't have coverage, is that right?
That's correct.
Now, back up here, we don't have any measurements on what this distance is from the kennels to the house, but if you're just driving in a buggy or a car or what have you, tell the jury roughly how long it would take in a vehicle to go from the kennels to the house.
It all depends how fast you're driving, but it don't take long to get from the sheds to the house.
I mean, you can do it under 2 minutes.
Definitely under 2 minutes.
Going fast enough, you can do it in a minute or less, I suspect. Is that right?
Yes, if you're going fast enough, you would be able to make it from the sheds to the house in under a minute.
Okay. You were asked about turkey season. When it started and when it ended, you remember? And you can tell me, I don't know, when's turkey season start?
Yes, most time mid-March to early May.
Okay. How about duck season? When does that start?
The first season starts around Thanksgiving. I think the weekend before Thanksgiving.
And when's the second season start?
Sometime in December,
And when's it end?
end of January.
Do you go duck hunting with Paul?
Yes, sir, I have.
And they had a duck pond on the property?
That's correct.
And did they keep it full all year, or did they drain it and plant it for the season?
Yeah, they would drain it after duck season and be ready to plant in the springtime.
And you helped with that?
I did.
And would Mr. Alex be involved, help doing that? But
He would.
and that was part of Paul's passion, doing things like that?
That's correct.
Now, waterfowl shells load are different than turkey load, right?
That's correct.
What's the difference?
Steel shot.
And steel shot for what?
For dogs, waterfowl.
And why is it just preferred or is it required?
It's required.
Because you don't want lead in the water?
That's correct.
But for hunting purposes, if you just had your choice, would you rather hunt with lead or steel?
Lead shot,
Because it has greater knockdown power?
it does.
Is that why you would rather, or just price too, I suspect?
What's that again?
Why would you prefer lead over steel?
It has better knockdown, it's better.
Okay. Now, you were asked questions about 300 blackouts, and at one time, Paul had his own, and Buster had his own. They had 300 blackouts. You remember that?
I did.
And then you heard that Paul had one stolen out of his truck at a party.
That's correct.
And do you remember roughly when that was?
I'm not exactly sure.
Years ago?
Yeah, it's been a good many years ago.
And in recent memory, have you ever seen Paul with a 300 blackout other than the black one with the thermal scope?
Not to my knowledge.
So whenever you were with Paul and he had a 300 blackout, it was the black one with the thermal scope.
That's correct.
Did you ever see a 300 blackout around the house that was black without a thermal scope?
Not to my knowledge, I haven't.
And just, I know the jury's heard it, what's a thermal scope?
Picks up the heat from the animal. You can see it at nighttime because of the heat.
Just for night hunting?
That's correct.
And that's the best time to hunt hogs?
It is.
But during the daytime, they stay in the swamp?
That's correct.
At night, they come out?
Yes, sir.
And y'all had cameras out there to see when they were coming out?
Sometimes we did.
Okay. Now, you listened to this videotape and heard that was your dog, Cash,
It was.
Chocolate Lab,
Yes, sir.
and you heard Miss Maggie,
Yes, sir.
and you heard Paul, obviously.
That's correct.
And Miss Maggie was saying he got I forgot him,
A guinea.
guinea, and then you heard a voice say, "No, it's a chicken." Do you remember whose voice that was?
That was Mr. Alex that said it the first time, and then Paul also said it was a chicken.
Okay. And then someone says, "Bubba, let go of that chicken," or something like that.
Yeah, just holler for Bubba.
And whose voice did you recognize hollering for Bubba?
Mr. Alex,
Okay. And who's Bubba?
their dog.
Did they have, and was Bubba a yellow lab?
He was.
Did Bubba have his own kennel?
He did.
Which one was it?
Most of the time, he was in the first one right beside the feed room.
Now, you had talked to Paul, I think the records show you had a 4-minute telephone conversation before that video was taken, which you didn't receive until law enforcement showed you. But you remember, you talked to Paul for about 4 minutes, right?
That's correct.
And I believe when you were interviewed, you said it sounded like Mr. Alec had pulled up or something to that effect, driven up. Do you remember that?
No, I don't ever remember hearing a vehicle.
Okay.
I just remember hearing a third voice.
Okay. And the next day, excuse me, was it the 8th? The next day you went over and met with and went into the house at Moselle and you saw Maggie's parents?
That's correct.
And that's when Grandma, Miss Brandstetter, asked you if you heard Maggie's voice?
Yes.
Okay. And you told her you did?
Told her I talked to Paul and heard Miss Maggie.
And you told him in front of everybody that you had, thought you'd heard Alex's voice too, right?
That's correct.
And he didn't push back whatsoever?
No, sir.
What was Alex's, demeanor, when you first saw him after the murders and days after? What?
He was just real distraught, sad. Just tore up about it.
Did he cry a lot?
Yes, sir.
Did he hug you?
He did.
Did he cry?
Yes, sir.
Did you cry?
Yes, sir.
I mean, did you cry the day after and the day after? I mean,
That was really sad.
right. 1 second. On this video, you've been around Alec, Maggie, and Paul most all your life. Was there any? Did you notice any signs of distress or anxiety or anything out of the ordinary?
I did not.
And you've been around Maggie and Alec and their whole family a lot.
Almost all of my life, yes, sir.
And would you see Alec openly show his display of affection and love to Maggie?
Yes, sir.
And from your observation, they have a close, good relationship?
That's correct.
And they were loving to each other and to Paul and Buster and their friends, correct?
That's correct.
And can you think of any circumstance that you can envision, knowing them as you do, where Alec would brutally murder Paul and Maggie?
Not that I can think of.
Thank you. That's all the questions I have.
Anything further?
You were asked some questions about the sheds being unlocked. Paul ever complained to you? People were up there stealing all kinds of stuff all the time?
I was never aware of people stealing anything.
When you talked to Paul and heard Maggie and Alec at 8:40, was there any problem with that voice call, or did it come through just fine? The reception was good.
The call came through, yes.
And the last conversation you had with Paul was he was going to do what if the FaceTime didn't work?
Send me a video.
And he never did.
That's correct.
You've heard that video and you hear three voices, is that correct? Maggie, Paul, and Mr. Alec?
In the video, yes, sir.
When you're standing, if you're at the house or inside the house on the second floor, something like that, can you see the roofs of the sheds and down there?
The last time I had been out there, yes, you would be able to see the top of the structure.
And if you're standing out here in front of them sheds, could you see the top of the house the other way?
Same thing, yeah. Last time I was there, you would be able to see the top of the structure. There was trees growing between the houses.
And that was a long time ago, right?
That's correct.
Down there at the sheds, did they have like outdoor lighting down there?
Yes, sir, they did.
And if all that was on, could you see all that lighting from the house?
Yes, you would be able to see that there were lights on from the house.
If those lights were on, it'd be pretty well lit up, is that right?
If all of them were, yes.
You were asked about the boat wreck. Were you aware that Paul had been charged in that boat wreck?
I was.
Were you aware that Alex Murdaugh had been sued in that boat wreck?
I was.
What was your perception of Alex's wealth? Did you believe he was a fairly wealthy man?
Yes, sir.
How long have you known Alex Murdaugh?
Pretty much all my life.
As you sit here today, did you really know him?
Yes, I know Mr. Elliott.
But as you sit here today, do you really know him?
Yes, I know Mr. Elliott.
Thank you.
Anything further? You may step down. We'll take about a 10-minute recess.